Hey there, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Snowpal Software Development and Architecture Podcast. This is podcast number 4 in this Salesforce Anypoint series. In the last one, we looked at the design center, dug a little bit deeper, got some understanding, created some basic REST endpoints, etc. Right, using Anypoint. Now we're going to continue. Just look at the AnyPoint Code Builder IDE in this podcast. See, take a first look. Again, I've not used any of these tools before, so I'm just going to learn. We're going to learn together, and and then see how it goes. So without further ado, let's continue. Just going to share my entire screen, my desktop. Okay, cool. So we were looking at the Hello World API in the last podcast. If you haven't seen it, number 3, just go back and check that out. In this one, let's go look at the Code Builder IDE and see how that looks. So I launched this one here, and I just did it spent like 5 or 10 minutes of playing around. Let me close these things. Take a first look. Uh, this is the VS Code version, right? You can also download it or run on your desktop. I'm running it on the browser. But as I was going through just looked at a couple of their pages, it seemed like a lot of the documentation spoke to an Eclipse-based IDE and AnyPoint Studio. So I don't know if everything that maybe in the past it was just the studio, and now they added support, browser-based support for this IDE. VS Code works beautifully, as we all know. So maybe I'm speculating. I have no idea. Maybe some of it was ported over, and maybe folks use both interchangeably. So again, complete speculation. I have no idea. At least from the 10 minutes I've seen, that's what I can gather. With that said, I think there's things that I do see in the documentation that specifically refers to the Eclipse-based Anypoint editor, which I also downloaded, by the way. It took like a few minutes, so I didn't want to do it during the recording. That's literally the only other thing I did between the third podcast and this one, and maybe one or two other things. So let's look at that right together. So I went in, I launched if I do a launch, you'll see it's going to bring up, it's going to prepare the Cloud IDE. Um, and this is pretty standard stuff that we've come to expect with VS Code, right? So I just have another one here, so I'm going to close that one. Uh, let's see, that's the first thing I did, the builder, and then I also downloaded the one for the desktop, just to see if there was any difference in functionality of plugins. I didn't expect there to be any, and there isn't, because the documentation, a lot of it referred to the AnyPoint Studio. Like when I googled some of the documentation, like how do I add a Mongo connector, was it this one or let's see. Yeah, let's say adding, I was looking for the Mule palette and I could not find it on VS Code. So I don't know if it's available. Like if you search for VS Code Mule palette, it talks about another extension which is called DataWeave. I don't know if this is different or this is a replacement to the Mule palette. Doesn't look like that. Let's start. Maybe it is, maybe it is not. Let's play with it and try to figure this out, right? So I did create like a very basic one. So I thought it was DataWeave. So I went ahead and created, was it this one? No, not that. This, yep. I just went by that example, created, I just said DataWeave, create integration mapping, and then I gave it a name. It popped up this name. And then from the example, I copy pasted a couple of lines. It's basically a date conversion function that you can call. There is a test there as well. So, and then if you run this, you need to make sure you put that in the right directories and the structures, because otherwise it did not really give me any design time errors. It was fine, but at runtime it complained because the directory structure it did not map, it did not match, I should say. Source main DW and test test DW. I think I didn't have one of those directories, for instance. So again, it did not complain at design time, but it complained at runtime. And error wasn't particularly very intuitive either. So this is doing a date conversion, right? So it's calling a date conversion function. Let's go here. Trying to get in, it doesn't let me. Oh, yeah, I am on the test. Oh, sorry. No, that is correct. What is going on here? Let's see. Let me close this. Let me go here. So that's the function. And now let me run this. Okay, that works. I'm just trying to get to it. Okay, and it takes me here. So there's it's very very basic, right? There's a date time conversion. It takes a date time, argument and a format, and it returns a conversion as a string essentially. So as I understood DWL, if you search for DWL file extension, oh, that's not it. I should just search for what is it? Anypoint DWL file extension. Yeah, I guess it's DataWeave. It's look like a custom MuleSoft DSL, DWL DataWeave language. So you need to just get used to that syntax if you're going to be doing that work. So you can just look up DataWeave language, or they have a playground. Yep, I haven't seen this one. I'm just looking at this now. Let's see. Payload this message, and then it prints out. So I guess we'll try to add another message. Does this work? And why not? So we'll just do a payload dot another message. Okay, so it's a DSL. I guess there's a JSON, and then this is how you read the values off of that. And we're saying output a JSON, for instance. Let's see. What other they have this? Okay, so if you go to strings, and then where was I? The playground. I guess we could just do hello. Not really. Oops, not there. Tutorial. Output JSON. Oh, what did I do differently? Output. This. Okay, maybe it's this one here. Yep. So I guess can we have both? Output application JSON, and then we have this. It does not. Maybe there's a print or something along those lines. I have no idea. Let's see. Maybe it's not puts. Okay, how do we again a completely random stab. So if you want to just spit out numbers, you do something along those lines. Here there are some assignments. Maybe we can do a can take what we had before. We're not outputting it. Let's say payload start. Okay, so if you're generating a JSON, it accepts it. I'm just trying to see how you'd write some code with both elements. This is outputting. Actually, this is outputting. I could just do JSON. Since it's expecting only JSON, let's say, can I have another? Of course not. So it's a single JSON it's trying to output. Let's look at something else a little bit more interesting. So there is a variable assignment there. You assign the variable above the 3 dashes. And then you could print mascot. Okay, so what's below? I'm trying to understand the 3-line difference. in DataWeave, but I guess we will discover as we go. How do we merge these two together? We again taking a digression. We started with AnyPoint, but again, this is just a learning exercise, just getting our feet wet. For anybody who's interested, who isn't, check this out. It's pretty informal, as you can obviously tell, right? We'll get back to AnyPoint because I want to share a couple of things about what I was able to find out in the 10 minutes between the recordings. But I'm just a little bit distracted given that I'm exposed to something new, a new DSL here. So we are printing out, so we are assigning mascot. Doesn't look like, let's say if I can do where temperature equals 25, right? So the data type, I guess there's no data type, we're just assigning a variable. Do I need to do that? I guess I do need to do that. Okay, it prints, let me remove this. Now I can print temp as well. Okay, let me understand this. So what is a print in DataWeave? DataWeave language print. Actually, let's just learn and discover the old-fashioned way just by doing it here. Okay, so this is basically printing out mascot. Here's the input, ID1, and then there is a descendant. Okay, let's take this input. Let's go here to our playground. I'm going to change the payload a little bit here. Okay, and then go back to tutorial. And then we're going to have output JSON, and that's the code. Hang on. Oh, no, my bad. I put it in the wrong place. Sorry. Above those lines. Okay. Now it's basically taking the descendant payload. Okay, what is it? This is payload, right? It's referencing it with payload. 2 dots and an ID. We're just getting 1, 2, and 3. So it says go any levels deep into these IDs and pick and choose them. So if I added a 4th level here, let's say second level, it's nested. And then you have a 3rd level, and I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say 4th level, and we're going to do ID. We're going to say 4. You know what? Let's say 7. And then we leave it be. Now we see 1, 2, 3, 7. So it goes all levels deep. Multi-value is, it's saying 1 and 11. It's only one level deep. It's showing both the values in an array. Second level, multi-value is empty because why is it? Because we are printing, because we don't want anything to be printed in that multi-level second value. Third level, and then all the IDs is again .. ID gives us all the IDs, right? Every ID at every level essentially. Multi-level second value, multi-level first value is payload .*ID. So we got these two. How do we get 2 and 22? If I wanted 2 and 22, let's see, payload dot second level dot star ID. So we get 2 and 22, right? So just a simple example. Again, see, we did not go through documentation like the traditional way of going through tutorials. What I mean is reading through documentation. There's no right or wrong answer. I know that approach works for some people. This works for some of us, where we just try playing with it. And then a couple of hours later, you get a hang of how it does things. And then you start coding to it and then learn as you go, essentially. Okay, this is nice, actually. The playground is very good. I mean, like Golang, for instance, has a fantastic playground. As Golang is a little bit more of a complex language, but again, you go through the playground, spend like 3-4 hours, you get a good sense, and then you can start coding and then learn as you go, get better and better at that, right? How else are we going to get better? Let's go to the tutorial. I would open this in 2 different windows if I were doing it more seriously, outside of a podcast, simply because you don't want to, this is time wasted. Every time we do this, it goes to the top and you're wasting time. So something like this, literally, I would say, copy it, Instead, go to tutorials. And then, where were we here? We were variable axis, right? We were on variable axis. And then, you should make it smaller. That way, you can split the editor and whatnot. So when you're going back and forth, you're not actually losing context. Okay. Let's go below. Let's look at a couple of more things about this, as I'm a little intrigued about this language. Logical operators. So the line separator, essentially what we have done here is all a variable is above. So let's look at this. What is this? DataWeave language, 3 dashes. Yep, consists of a header and a body separated by three dashes. Header contains a language, directives, etc. Exactly what we had thought, right? We assumed based on what we saw here. Okay, so let's say there's let's look at some more code. Let's see. Let's go back. Oh, they have something called lambdas. That's not too bad. So you have this and see what happens. Okay, so how do you have multiple lines of code in this body here? That's the part I'm still not sure about. Each of them might work in itself. Why is this not working? Output JSON. Output is JSON. 2 plus 3, it's complaining. Cannot coerce function to string. Oh, they did say that's going to be an error. So there we go. Let's look at it here. Yeah, how do you have multiple lines of code in this script? Here, it's basically making a function call. You can look at the explanation here. Lambdas not having names, etc. DataWeave script multiple sample script maybe. So that's all the header, and then you have the body. Let's see. Actually, let's read DataWeave script dash 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 3 dashes, right? Or we should just say 3 dashes. We saw that consists of a body and separated by 3 dashes. Body contains expression that produces resulting output. Resulting output usually a data mapping or a transformation. Right? All of those transformations happen to be in the body. So let's look at a little more DataWeave examples. Select all single lines. DataWeave multi-line script. Multi-line is usually not okay. So here it's doing a bunch of different things. Let's see. Still trying to wrap my head around what goes in a body versus a header. DataWeave body versus header. Language directives, I got that part, and can also contain variable and function declarations. The body contains expression that produces the resulting output, usually a data mapping or a transformation. So if you had a few lines of code, let's just find script anatomy. We're back here again. Okay, actually, you know what? Let's just go through this and see if we can find function as value. Again, they have a function, one line. Give me something a little bit more complex, please. This is not giving me what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's keep looking. DataWeave script example. Uh, we'll keep looking. Extract data. Okay, here, let's take. So we have again a couple of different variables and you're extracting value from it. That's too simple and straightforward. Map and flatten an array. Okay, so there is a function that does whatever it needs to do. And then you have something in the body, which is again a single line essentially. One more time, it's a single line. DataWeave script body multiple lines. Um, all of them seem to be packed into a single line output. Okay. When you write inline by flattening all the lines into a single line for smaller scripts allows you to quickly apply header directives, including headers in inline DataWeave scripts. So maybe there is a notion of an inline DataWeave script versus language guide. So it's a primary data transformation language for use in Mule flows. So if you're building Mule applications, clearly this is something you need to wrap your head around. Keywords you can use for header directives. So there's import statements, variable declarations. Okay, and then body here. Okay, it contains an expression that generates output, provides a canonical way for you to work on data, a query, transform, and build process. It takes the entire payload of the JSON input, transforms it into something. Okay, comments, double slashes. Okay. Escape special characters, reserved keywords, TWL files. Still, I'm not able to get the answer. Contains an expression that generates the output structure. So it seems like it's a single expression. So maybe the way this gets wired into a Mule application, I have to presume that you need a single expression. And if one leads to another, I'm presuming you're going to have a flow, a workflow, where you pass data from one to the other. So what I have to assume that is the case unless and until we find out otherwise, right? So now that we're here, let's run a couple of more things because this actually is a little bit fun, right? We are learning something new. Okay, payload.id is less than 100. And then now let's print out action. I guess we can only print one of them. I presume if you have to print more, you'll put that in some sort of a function or an expression in the body, and then you print out more, right? For instance, let's say we had this one here. Let's try something. Let's say if I have an output result is this, and then I have action. I'm going to do action. Right now I have both of them. So it says if payload ID is less than 100, then buy, else hold. So you have this code that we are writing. It's just another, again, DSL, right? Another language. You get used to it. Seems pretty straightforward. You're going to spend a couple of hours and you get a good hang of it. I doubt, I mean, the DSL, I could be wrong and pretty judgmental here, but the DSL languages typically don't tend to be too complicated. At least not like learning a brand new language, so to speak. Like learning Golang, for instance, would probably take a little bit more time, I reckon, than learning. Sorry, let me just too many of my than learning something like this. But I think we got the idea. We saw logical operators, named functions. Actually, let's create one function. Okay, and then we're going to call this function here. Result2 is add, and then you're going to pass. Let's see, if I wanted to store this in another way, I don't know. I don't want to get too fancy here. Okay, it's going to be, I'm going to say payload dot id, or I could say payload dot, was it star id, something like this. Okay, so it essentially took that, payload, what is this, dot star id, ids, I'm just going to say that that's 1 and 11. We pass 1, 11, and then 2. The result is printing out an array. Let's try just doing a number here. That's okay. That's what I expected. I expected this to, well, it's actually passing an array and then a number. So maybe it's not flattening it, but I thought we saw something that said you could actually flatten. Oh, where did that window go away? It's hidden somewhere here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's just taking a little bit. Okay, I'm doing it on laptop, so it's just only so many windows. I thought I saw something here that said flatten. Did we not vaguely recall seeing something that said filter function as value, distinct reduce? So what we're doing here is we passed an array which is 1 and 11, and then we passed 2 arguments. And it's interesting, you just put 1, 11 and 2 together. As you know, it is happy to take that expression, so it's not looking for an array, it's not strongly typed in that sense. What if I passed a string? Is it going to freak out, or maybe not? Okay. Call the function with these arguments. It expects one of these combinations. So that's what it says, right? It says you can send any of these, but not actually a string. Okay. So let's go back here. And there must be a way to flatten this. Let's see, DataWeave, flatten array, flatten arrays of elements. But how? Oh, there's a flatten function. Why don't we try passing flatten to it? Well, it flattened what I'm just trying to see if we can add 1, 11, and 2. Maybe it make flatten. Oops. Flatten. Well, it flattened, but it still did not add those values. So I don't know what difference this actually made. Let's see what flatten's going to do here. Flatten array 1, it basically takes key 1, key 2, key 3. It flattened the whole thing into a single array, right? It flattens multiple arrays into a single one. So that doesn't really make a difference to what we need. Anyways, I'm just taking a non-existential requirement and doing it, but it's interesting to see that I was able to pass this and it just try to return a bunch of arrays, a bunch of elements in an array. Okay, function as value. And we can look at more of this, but you can see there's only so much here, right? There's map reduce, there's filter objects for string manipulation. If that is it, then that's just pretty small, and it probably does the basics of what you need from a data transformation standpoint. Once you know it, I assume you can tie this into these components and you create the flow and have those being passed from one to the other, is what I'm assuming it actually is doing. So we 15 minutes ago, I had no idea what DataWeave was. But I think 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, we have some idea what that DSL is, and we've tried some examples, and that gets you going, right? So never, if you don't know something, someone says, can you go, Krish, go implement something in DataWeave? You're like, okay, I have no idea what it is, but then a couple hours later, you come up with a solution. Right now, we need to figure out how you take this and then you wire it into whatever it is that you're doing. That's something I highly recommend. Because sometimes I see good developers, do something like this, right? Where you actually try to set up the whole thing before you get this running. Even if they did not provide a playground, you have to sort of create your own playgrounds in you can do it in one of many ways, essentially, right? Create simple applications, treat that as a playground. Even when you're working on a large Java application, when you're writing a piece of complex code or even not so complex code, write it independently so it works. And then you can plug that into your whole, application, because sometimes you need 7 dependencies till you get to this point, and 3 things happen after after your piece runs. You never know where things fail if they do fail. So it's always best to get yours running in isolation and then plug that into the larger system. Okay, DataWeave, I think we have an idea, so we can probably close these tabs. Leave bye-bye for now. So back to this, right? So this is essentially what I was doing here. Let me close this as well. Okay, am I still recording? Yep, I am. Yep. So what is happening here? We were just trying to recall. So we took an example, a DataWeave language as a function, I guess, and then we ran it, and it basically did the conversion, just as an example. And then if you go to terminal, when you open it, let's say these are the files. Where am I? I go back one step. Okay, cool. I think that's fine. So that's what I noticed, and then you can do the same thing in your editor without doing it, in the embedded browser-based IDE. But I looked at that, and I looked at something else as well. And then I was looking at, hey, how do I create like a simple, what is it, a Mule application, if that's what it's called. Uh, I was going through the code builder essentially. I don't want to install anything else. I didn't want to install the AnyPoint Studio editor, but I actually had to, because I was trying to play with one of their initial examples. Like, I think I went to one of these pages and it said create a MongoDB connector, and for the life of me, I could not find how I would create a MongoDB connector here. So I created this just so I can show you. What I did here was I went in, I think I said AnyPoint. I said develop an integration. I gave it a name, and then this is what happened, right? It popped up this UI is like a visual workflow where I can kind of like drag and drop, not drag and drop, like add these flow components and whatnot. You can go to the flow. Oops, let me go back there. Since I already have a flow, I can go to connectors. I can say database, and I said something like select, for instance, right? And I already have that, so I'm going to do this. So that select wrote this, generated the DSL for me, right? Again, remember, this is low code, I don't know if it's no code, but it's pretty low code platforms. So a lot of it is generated for you, and then you plug and play essentially, right? Do the mapping there. So here we're adding a SQL connector, but then I was like, okay, I need to, before I write the SQL script, I want to establish the connection to a database, like whether it's Postgres running locally or MySQL or Mongo, doesn't really matter. I don't see how that connector could be done here. And if you're familiar with this, you should probably share, add a note or a comment on the podcast so other people can benefit. I have to believe there is a way to do it, but I couldn't. I right clicked, I only see delete. So I don't know where these connectors should possibly come from. And all the examples, at least the one or two examples I saw, in the 2 minutes, it pointed to the AnyPoint Studio editor, like an Eclipse-based editor. So I said, okay, you know what, let me download this. And that's basically what I did. And then I see the Mule palette, right? I didn't have to look harder. The Mule palette is right there. And then this looks pretty similar. If you look at bulk delete, bulk insert, that's kind of what we saw here as well. Like if I go to connectors, database, bulk delete, bulk insert, stored procedures, and the whole 9 yards. But when I added the select, when I drag and drop the select, and I click that, you see this pane at the bottom that says pick your connector configuration, and then you can go, edit or add a. I added, a GDPC drive. I just picked the Maven dependency, and you can tell the UI looks pretty bad. I think it's just not doesn't work on these Macs. I've seen I don't know how Eclipse, if it's still stuck in time, uh, or if there's a way to wiggle out of these issues. You see the fonts, they just don't work. They look terrible. Uh, the whole look and feel, essentially, right? Maybe there's a solution. If there is, please again comment. But if it takes more than 5 minutes to find it, then the tool is literally lacking, because it's not worth doing it, right? VS Code is just so simple to use. Why would I spend even 10 minutes trying to figure out a piece Eclipse-based IDEs? From 10 years ago, where I used to like Eclipse, I've gone on the other extreme where I'm not a fan of it, as you can clearly tell. But just my personal opinion, yeah. Okay, yeah, hopefully I'm still recording. I have a few too many windows open here. This one I think we may have gone through in the previous podcast, so I probably can even close that. But before okay, I'm still here. It's recording 30 minutes in, so we should wrap this up soon. Okay, so you go here back to Eclipse or AnyPoint Studio. You see that, okay, let me close down, save. I go here, show me the palette. I pick this. Ignore it, Mongo. It's just DB. I just called it Mongo. And again, ignore all of these queries. But ultimately, there's a database connector, right? A connector configuration. And again, I did not see this present itself on VS Code. So I don't know what kind of support there is. Maybe there is support. I'm just not seeing it. But anyway, so you can set up your connectivity. And I tried to do it for Mongo. Unfortunately, it failed. I ran into an error. Like if I show it to you here, what I did was I actually tried to add a Maven dependency for Mongo, and it installed the dependency. I just went in here somewhere. I picked up, I picked up the Maven dependency, right? Add MongoDB as a dependency. I went here. Oops. Okay. It is actually, let me go back there. See, it says dependency artifact already exists in the project is because I added that previously just before I hit record. But then when I test the connection, it says test failed, no bean available, blah blah blah. This is the error I'm looking for. I want to make sure, because I ran into an error, and then when I googled, I found this is the error I ran into, right? It basically said the following exceptions were encountered while resolving. No exceptions recorded, but no modules resolved. That's what I saw. Let's see, what did I do for me to actually see that? Let's go back here. Back here. I'm gonna hit cancel because there are errors. Flow error. I wanted to reproduce the exact same error that I noticed. So we had the data. I'm trying to think. Okay, let's actually do this. Maybe two different errors, but let's say I want to establish a Mongo connectivity. So I go here. I'm going to close that one. Not interested in that. Mule palette. Yep, Mule palette for data. It says see click DB add modules. This is actually one thing I did in Mule palette. You go to add modules to. Do I get out of this mode? There must be a better way to do this. Okay. Go to search and exchange and then you search Mongo. Yeah, there actually, this is where I think I ran into that because that one was different. Sorry, ignore that. And I tried to add this, the Mongo connector, and try to install the connector. See, this is where it says no exceptions recorded, but no modules resolved either. So I couldn't even add the MongoDB connector. Forget this. I was doing something else to set this up. It's different. And then I Googled, and it's this is an open issue from not too long ago, November 27th. It says this is a known issue, right? So I only ran at the first issue, into the first issue. But let's say you did not. I guess here is how this thing, I believe, might work, right? Let's say we delete this. Do I? Okay. Let's say we add a request. Try and drag this here. How can I delete this particular flow? Right click, delete. Okay, go away. Okay, now we have the request. I guess you can define in HTTP request or a RESTful request or whatnot, right? And then you can get some response back. I guess you would say, oh, no, maybe I did it wrong. I've never seen this tool before, so apologies if I'm doing something silly here. Still seems strange. It sometimes does not give me the option to delete it. Can hardly tell I'm even selecting it. And that clearly looks like there are bugs here. Okay. Now there is a request. How do I add something to this flow? There's supposed to be an arrow here. Request. Okay, we're going to get something. Let's say we get something back from this request. And we get a response back, and I want to transform that response. So I'm going to drag this transform and put it here. Okay, how do I connect? Save it. How do I connect these two? Oh no, these are two different flows. So maybe I'm doing it the wrong way. This user interface is horrible. Yeah, there's certainly a bug. When I delete that, it doesn't let me delete. I have to come back, select it again, and then it shows me a delete. Okay. Oh, hang on. Delete this. Okay, let's start. Can I delete this flow as well? Let's start from scratch. I want to have a request. Okay, dragged an operation. I don't care what the request is going to be. Now I need to modify this flow. Wrap in. I don't want to wrap in anything. Extract to subflow. Flow name subflow. Nope. I don't know if I'm doing. All that I'm trying to do here is see how I can drag one more component. And for somebody who's done this before, they'll be like, Krish, what is this? It's so easy to do. I'm just trying not to look for documentation and try to figure this out, because it should have been as simple as that, where you drag and drop the other one to extend the flow. Because when I try to do, let's say you try to do something here, see, that's how it is, right? It's okay. Let's say we have here, and I'm going to add something else like a connector, a database connector. I don't know, it doesn't matter. I can insert and then add something else, another connector, could be an email. I don't know, send an email, right? So you have this flow here, right? This is basically a flow. Go away. Can you go away? Trying to increase the size. Okay. Okay, let's wait for that. Okay, so okay, these I'm not a drag and drop person. Clearly, I'm just used to writing the code. So these low code tools need a different perspective. just being able to use it and be productive, and we're not spending time minimizing and maximizing a million times. Probably it's just easier to write the XML rather than drag and drop here, possibly. How can I make this go away? The Maven mod. Let me just. It's coming in my way, unfortunately. Okay. This is the UI flow. It looks fancy. It just takes a little bit of time for it to prepare itself. It's taking more than a bit. That's an awfully long time to prepare. Is that freaking out? Is that buggy? Yeah, that doesn't look so right to me. Okay, let's do open recent. I have no idea why it's taking that long. Go away, go away, go away. Okay, I'm going to delete everything here. So we have a flow that's error. I guess, can I have an empty flow? Okay. Now we do this. Oops. We build a flow. I'm going to say, yeah, this UI is really questionable. Okay. It's got a lot of issues, to say the least. Yep. Okay. So let's say we go to, where was it? I thought we had database. Okay, database. Just do a select. We have that, and then we go here, connectors, email, and then we send, right? Something like this. So, and then you created this to drag and drop, or not drag and drop, just click and add, and then you can make these changes. You select some data, based on that you do some transformations, you send some emails out. So it's low code there, right? You're not really writing code other than pretty much dragging and dropping and making some adjustments to configuration. So the perspective has to be actually different. Now, that said, let's say I want to do something similar here. Uh, Maybe that flow is perhaps different from this flow. Let's see, there's a flow reference. Yep, I don't know. It's maybe we'll have to just look up documentation to see. All I want to do is have just something like that. Have a request, get a response, and then transform that response essentially. So why am I not able to drag and drop fields to build the Oh, hang on. How did that show up there? Never mind. I just had to drop it inside this flow. I was dropping it outside. Oh my goodness. Okay, that was the problem. Okay, now if you wanted to add a new flow, I guess would we add a new flow? Each flow, and then I don't know how you have request flow from move from one flow to the other. And I'm sure there's a way to do it. So you transform messages. You can transform message any number of times, right? You take one, whatever happens from here, you map those attributes. Imagine you're making a request to third party, getting a list of restaurants, and then you do some transformation. And on top of that, you do another transformation. The reason you want to keep it small when you're building these flows is because when you're fixing something, it's like writing code and keeping your, not a monolith or a microservice, right? See, think of each of these as, I'm using the words very loosely, as a microservice released in the smallest form, or a function. That way, when something is wrong, when you want to pull something out, you only pull that out and it fix the flow, but your impact is not dramatic, and it's easy but not as difficult to keep it backward compatible, for instance. So anyways, keep those flows simple, and then you can add any number into this mix here, right? You're inserting something. Now after you transform the message, maybe you do a bulk update, right? Let's say I drag the bulk update in here. And after you do all of this, you run, right? You basically run. I'm just going to save sample. Yeah, that's okay, right? And it builds, it's going to run it, and then you're going to be able to test it. And then if things work, obviously we haven't done anything here for it to work. You can package and deploy it, right? So if essentially you could do this as somebody who's not, you don't necessarily, I presume you don't have to be a developer. These roles are becoming very, all the roles, a lot of these roles are merging as, as AI comes into the picture. If you've not done development, you can actually step into development, with the help of a lot of these tools without being going through a formal process of training, if you will. Similarly, a developer could learn a product management skill because a lot of these AI and these prompts are actually bridging those gaps. So all of us can do a lot of things, and things that we may or may not have direct skills or learning or training experience with, at least to get started. So the way I see it is, if you want to do development but don't necessarily want to be writing a lot of code, uh, or you enjoy doing integration work where you like to write some code, I'm pretty sure you can plug in snippets here, and you want to be able to build, integrate large systems, then tools such as this should work well. Just as you're understanding what do you want to try out, where do you want to go in your career after you graduate or after you're done for a while. Now, that was not the purpose of this podcast, but we've sort of digressed a little bit. I just want to show you what it meant to getting started with something that you may or not have ever used. Right now, I don't know what the length of this podcast is at this point. Maybe it's close to an hour, give or take. Let me close this window. So that's before I close it, I don't know if there's anything else to see here, right? We added a flow. We figured out how to drop components into a flow, and then you can get it working, run it, test it, and then deploy it. Now, there's a lot of tools such as this, very similar. I've used one called Tailend, which probably, I don't know if it's in this space, it looks similar. I did some work for a month or so, trying to get a few of these transformations working. Um, there are a lot of similarities. That one looked a little bit less dated than this one looks to me, even though I'd used it some time ago, actually, right? So when you get started with something, again, there's no right or wrong answer. There's many ways to skin the cat, as they say. The way we approach it at Snowpal is we just start using the tool, digesting it, getting the feel for it. By the end of the day, we have something working, right? And then that you feel better. You have a commit, you have a PR, hopefully gets approved and then merged into your dev branches. You feel like, yep, you've gotten started, you've hit the ground running. So let me actually close this one. I can even close this editor. I can close this. I'll close this. We talked about the Mule palettes. So just close this, close Mongo, come back here. Okay, and then we saw a flow here as well. We saw the DataWeave, the DSL, and the right. Oops. Let me actually go back here. We learned. We went to the playground, played a little bit with that. Checked out the integrated IDE on the browser. Also saw the AnyStream. Sorry, not AnyPoint. Code Builder AnyPoint Studio. AnyPoint Studio. Uh, and that, I think, gives us some idea, right? If you had no idea what any of these things were, hopefully at the end of this an hour and a half, you have some idea, right? An initial very high level exposure, so you feel like, yep, I can just do the same things, get started, make more progress, and chug along, essentially. So we've looked at Code Builder, looked at Design Center, and then I guess in the next podcast, well, what is Exchange? I think Exchange is basically, we created this API. We talked about all of this in the first podcast. So maybe this Exchange is just where you go look at, this is what we created. And then if you look at what MuleSoft provides, you have a lot of these other plugins. And I think you know what, let's do one more thing. Let's search for Mongo here. Yeah, you have the Mongo connector. And then if you go into this is basically what I want to say we were looking at, right? Getting started with that connected AnyPoint Studio. So you get all these plugins. And I don't know if there's a way to build this right here as opposed to going to an IDE outside, which is probably, yes, you can, because you could actually go to that integrated VS Code IDE, except that for some reason I didn't find a way to add this connector. But there has to be a way to add the connector. Otherwise, I don't expect to see that here. So we probably just didn't find where it is. Maybe we can give it one more shot. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to move. Maybe in the next one, we can look at what a data graph is, right? And we're just going to go through a lot of these as a way. Hopefully, this helps you if you're trying to get started with any of these items, whether you're in school, in college, at work, and you're trying to learn some of these things. I want to learn with you, except you're not here, unfortunately. You'll be watching this offline. But maybe I'm going to hit some of my hit some people I know and see if they want to, folks who actually work in integration. I know a lot of really smart people who I've worked with who specialize in these types of things. And if I can convince them to come on board to the podcast, we can take take a much deeper dive into these items. But I think we're making some progress here. So I think this is we are about at an hour almost. So I'm going to end this. Uh, Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something. Check out our APIs and our SaaS products on AWS Marketplace, or go to saas.snowpal.com, saas.snowpal.com, and you'll see our offerings. If you're building mobile, web apps, microservices, use your time, resources, money, and effort to solving your real customer problems. Anything else that seems boilerplate like, it probably is boilerplate. If you think, right, what they say, right, if it what sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, and or quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So if you think what you're doing is boilerplate-ish, then you shouldn't. We advise that you don't do it. Rely on us, integrate our APIs, or license our APIs and provision them in your own infrastructure. That's completely doable as well. It's quite easy, and we can help you. That's about it. Thanks for watching.